Hey, welcome back to the Bible Reading Project. We're reading Romans chapter 1 this week, and we're reading it every single day. Zero excuse, and well, we hope that it's working. Here with Pastor Mark, and he is going to take us into Romans chapter 1.
Dude, it's a good chapter.
It is. It's really good.
Yeah. It's probably one of the chapters that everybody that likes to debate anything of sinful behavior pulls Romans 1 out, right?
Right.
You know, homosexuality, sinful behavior. Let's go to Romans 1.
Yeah, right.
But I want to talk about something a little different. I want to come around a different thing. So I'm just going to read a few verses, and I'm going to land on our verse. Our verse that we're going to land on is Romans 1:20, and then I want to ask a question. But I want to read a few verses. Again, like Ryan said, we want you to read it every single day. You know, all 32 verses. It takes, three minutes max.
Right.
So I want you to read all 32 verses. And then what we're trying to do is just give you some thinking outside those 32 verses to challenge you to think more about growing in your faith with Jesus. So listen to this. Because what I'm focusing on is this invisible God wants to be seen. That's the whole thing, is that God is trying to be known. He wants to be known by humans. Listen to verse 3 and verse 4. The good news about his son, that's Jesus, in this earthly life, he was born into King David's family line, and he was shown to be. So God is trying to become visible, right? This invisible God of the Old Testament, he shows up in a bush, he shows up in a rock, a cloud, comes in the flesh, you know, so he can be seen. Next verse is in verse number 8. Paul says, let me say first that I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, and listen to him, because your faith in him is being talked about all over the world.
Yeah, wow.
So the moment I believe in Jesus, there's this expectation that my faith becomes infectious.
Yeah.
And people talk about my faith. That the sad thing is more people talk about a Christian's hypocrisy than they talk about their genuine faith.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, that person there, he says he's a Christian, but, you know, or I don't go to church because they're hypocrites, right?
Right.
But Paul kind of assumes that a genuine believer, somebody that claims to be a born again, believing in Christ, a Christian, he says that there should be something so dramatically different in you,
Right.
Such a change in you. I think you said a few weeks ago something profound. When you got born again, you realized that you couldn't have anger toward your earthly father, right? And have hate toward him.
Right.
Well, that's what Paul's saying. Like when you claim to be born again, there is a visible change in you. Now, not outwardly per se, you know, you're not getting a different skin, hair color,
Right.
but a visible change in what comes out of you, your actions, the way you talk, the way you think, the way you act, those things. And he says, now, if you're not careful, what'll happen is your faith will be talked about. But you and I both know that not only is faith talked about, but your failures are talked about too.
Right.
I'll pick on everything wrong with you, and I'll label you a hypocrite because you have failures. Listen to what he goes on to say. This is in verse 13. He said, I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, that I planned many times to visit you, but I was prevented until now. I want to work among you. And then this line, he said, and I want to see your spiritual fruit. So there's nothing wrong with two Christians hanging out going, dude, I need to see some fruit in your life.
Yeah.
Like you keep saying you know Jesus, you keep saying you're a Christian. Well, I need to see fruit here. And that's not an arrogant thing, right?
No, right.
Yeah, what we throw at each other is, oh, you can't condemn me. It's none of your business anyway.
Yep.
Right? But the reality is well, if you claim it, I should expect it. You know, if I buy a vehicle and in the vehicle, it has on the sticker all these things that come with it. You know, I get all the leather interior, I get all the upgrades, and then I buy it. None of that's in there.
Yep.
I'm like, well, I got ripped off.
Yeah, right.
And I think sometimes Jesus may think that of us. Like, I've put all this stuff in you. You're a walking testimony of my life, but what should be in you and what's, you know, you say is not what you're presenting. So that's kind of what Paul is saying.
Well, verse 12, he says, I'm coming to encourage you, but I also have an expectation that you're going to encourage me.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's wanting to be encouraged by that
Absolutely.
fruit.
It's a mutual thing.
Yep.
Verse 19 and 20, and this is where we landed yesterday, and we're going to talk about all week. He said, talking about people who should know God and do know God, but then they take truth. This is verse 19. He said they know the truth about God because God made it obvious to them. In other words, there is a way that God makes obvious himself. And then verse 20, and this is what we're talking about all week. For ever since the world was created, that's days 1 through 7, Genesis 1. So we're connecting Romans 1 with Genesis 1. He said, people have seen the earth and the sky. Through everything God made, That's days 1 through 7.
Right.
They can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. That's profound.
That is.
Like I should be able to walk outside, look at the trees, look at the clouds, and go, I got no excuse there's not a God. So the reality is, why would any human on a planet have an excuse for not knowing God?
Yeah.
And I believe it's simply because from the time we're born, we just remove creation completely out of your life. Even in schools today,
Right.
many of them teach evolution. Creationism is hotly debated. But when you constantly hear everything that's anti-creation,
Yeah.
there is no God, there is no creator, there were no 7 literal days of creation. What about cavemen? What about dinosaurs? What about Adam? What about his belly button? What about all the stuff? And I totally just annihilate that. Then it becomes very difficult for a person to really walk out the door and see the clouds and go, man, the clouds shows there's a God. It's like, nah, man, there's some big bang, boom, million years ago. So what I want to do is dig out that creation clearly proves there's a God.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I want to dig out, man. Where are the dinosaurs? Is the Earth 1 billion years old, or is it not? Is it only 1,000 years old? Because if God says I can go back to creation and clearly see Him, well, what better way if I'm an enemy, if I'm the devil? What better way to go? No, I'll obscure God. I will literally make creation thinking absolutely the most asinine, stupid, dumb thing ever. That you could actually believe that some foreign dude, some supernatural being could blow something up and in 7 days make something out of nothing. No, cannot happen. So what do we end up doing? We fight science with the Bible. Science. And you have some say science is God. No, the Bible's God. And then you have others go, no, they blend perfectly well together because God made it all to work perfectly well. And so what we end up with, where Paul is saying, man, there should be a whole world of humans here that don't have an excuse anymore. And so the question becomes, what's your excuse? What is the thing that really holds people back from seeing God? And my personal opinion, it's not your daddy or your preacher. That's your excuse. This is what I don't know what you believe here, but I'm gonna go on a limb.
Okay.
I believe we blame not believing on God on life, right? Somebody screwed me over. Somebody molested me, did me wrong. There can't be a God. If there was a God, why are babies dead?
Sure.
And so I find all the things. I believe one of the true reasons that people struggle to know God in a real life-meaning way is that few people really teach creationism in a solid way. Like the 7 days of creation.
Right.
And, when we bump into something really hard, we just kind of go, let's don't talk about that, move on. So let's do it tomorrow. Let's come back and try to, discuss some of those things.
Just to add on, I think you're right. Going out on the limb, it's more than just my life. I think, and this is a thought I've been thinking about for a few days now, is knowledge versus wisdom. And I asked you about it. Well, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? And just talking about, I think we have a lot of knowledge in this world, right? The knowledge of, well, I know that it came from a little atom spinning in outer space, and then boom, all of a sudden we were here. And I know, and I have all this knowledge of how all these things work and how my atoms work and how my DNA works. I have a lot of knowledge, but doesn't meet the wisdom. And the wisdom is the vehicle to move forward. And I think a lot of us don't have the vehicle and that's what it goes on to talk about here is, I think they had a lot of wisdom, but they weren't moving forward. They were just spinning in their wheels, having relationships out of the will of God and all kinds of crazy stuff. So
absolutely.
That wisdom versus knowledge.
Oh yeah, right. It's having the knowledge of, man, I know what my body can do sexually, or as he goes into all that stuff, but then the wisdom of, well, that's not why I was created. Right. So it's going to be good. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to tomorrow, and let's hash out dinosaurs. That'll be fun. Yeah, where'd T-Rex go? Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope to see you tomorrow. Remember, prayer I always pray for you is, Lord, if you can use anything, you can use me. And if anybody comes across my path that needs you, may I ever be so bold to lead them to you. Love you. See you tomorrow. Romans 1.